Kalara pressed her massive body against the cold metal wall of the cargo ship. Her copper-colored scales had lost their shine weeks ago. The 3 small dragons sleeping beside her were all she had left in the universe. Their names were Pyrex, Ember, and Flare. They were her children, and they were the reason she had lost everything. The ship shook as it moved through space. Each shake reminded Kalara that this old vessel might break apart at any moment. The captain had warned her that the engines were failing. He also made it clear that her money would only get her to Nexus Station. After that, she would be on her own with 3 hungry babies. Kalara remembered the day everything changed. She had been living on Dracosia Prime, the beautiful homeworld of all dragons. The crystal towers reached high into the purple sky. The air smelled of fireflowers and ancient magic. She had been an important dragon there. Other dragons respected her. She could control plasma energy better than most dragons her age. The Dragon Council had given her a place among the Guardian caste, the elite group that protected their world. But then her eggs had hatched 3 months early. Dragon Society had rules about everything. The most important rule was about when babies could be born. For thousands of years, dragon children were only born during the sacred season. This happened once every 5 years when the 3 moons of Dracosia lined up perfectly. The Dragon Council said this timing was sacred. They believed dragons born at the wrong time would be weak or cursed. Kalara had tried to explain that she couldn't control when her eggs hatched. She had done everything right. She had followed all the rituals and eaten the proper foods. She had meditated in the sacred caves for months, but her babies came early anyway. Elder Vorthak was the oldest and most powerful dragon on the council. His scales were black as space and his eyes glowed red like dying stars. When he spoke, every dragon listened. On the day of judgment, his voice had filled the great crystal hall. Kalara of the copper scales, he had said, you have broken the most sacred law of our people. Your children were born outside the sacred season. This brings shame to all dragons and threatens our ancient traditions. Kalara had begged them to understand. My lord, I could not stop their birth. They chose their own time to come into the world. Surely this means something, but Elder Vorthak had no mercy. Your actions show disrespect for our ancestors and our ways. You are no longer welcome among the dragon clans. Take your cursed offspring and leave our world forever. Do not return. The other dragons she had called friends turned away from her. No one spoke in her defense. Even her own clan leader said nothing. Within hours, she was loading her few possessions onto a cargo ship. The captain had looked at her with disgust when she paid him with her life savings. Now, weeks later, she was broke and homeless. The ship's food supplies were almost gone. Her children were growing fast and needed more food each day. Pyrex, the oldest, had golden scales that reminded her of his father. Ember was smaller but fierce, with red marks around her eyes. Little Flare was mostly brown with orange spots, and he sneezed tiny sparks when he was happy. Mama, Pyrex whispered, opening his bright green eyes. I'm hungry. Kalara's heart broke a little more. I know, my brave one. We will find food soon. Where are we going? Ember asked, stretching her small wings. To a place called Nexus Station, Kalara said. It's a trading post where many different species live and work together. Will they like us there? Flare asked, his voice tiny and worried. Kalara didn't know how to answer. She had heard stories about Nexus Station. It was a rough place on the edge of civilized space. Pirates, smugglers, and outcasts gathered there. The station was built from old ships and scrap metal. Crime was common and life was cheap. But it was also a place where no one asked too many questions about your past. We will make our own way, she told her children. We are strong and smart. We will survive. The ship's intercom crackled to life. Attention passengers, the captain's rough voice announced. We will arrive at Nexus Station in 2 hours. Prepare for docking. Kalara looked out the small window at the stars. Somewhere among them was Dracosia Prime, the world that had rejected her family. She had spent her whole life there, following their rules and believing in their traditions. Now she wondered if those traditions were wrong. Her children were not cursed. They were beautiful and intelligent. Pyrex could already create small flames with his breath. Ember could sense electrical energy in the ship's walls. Little Flare's sparks seemed to dance with joy when he was happy. How could the council call such wonderful creatures a mistake? The ship shuddered again, and this time the lights flickered. The captain cursed loudly from the bridge. Kalara realized they might not make it to the station at all. The old vessel was falling apart around them. She gathered her children closer to her warm body. Whatever happened next, they would face it together. The Dragon Council had tried to destroy her spirit, but they had failed. She was still their mother, and she would protect them with her life. As Nexus Station appeared in the distance, Kaylara made a promise to herself and her children. They would not just survive in this new place. They would prove that dragons born outside the sacred season could be just as good as any others, maybe even better. The station looked like a giant metal spider floating in space. Hundreds of ships were docked to its many arms. Lights flickered across its surface like tiny stars. It was ugly compared to the crystal towers of home, but it represented something precious, a chance to start over. The cargo ship's engines groaned as they approached the docking bay. Kaylara could smell burning metal and leaking fuel. They were going to make it, barely. Soon she would be standing on the deck of Nexus Station with her 3 children, facing an uncertain future. But for the first time in weeks, Kaylara felt a spark of hope. Whatever came next, it had to be better than the rejection and shame they had left behind. Her children deserved a world that would see their worth, not their differences. The ship touched down with a loud clang of metal on metal. The captain's voice came over the intercom one last time. "End of the line, Dragon Lady. Time to go." Kaylara stood up and stretched her great wings for the first time in days. Her children looked up at her with trust and love in their eyes. She would not let them down. "Come, my darlings," she said. "Our new life begins now." Jake Martinez wiped the grease off his hands with an old rag. The Zenthari cargo ship he had been fixing was finally running properly. Its engines hummed quietly instead of making the horrible grinding noise from before. Jake stepped back to look at his work. After 20 years of fixing ships, he still felt proud when he solved a difficult problem. The Zenthari captain looked unhappy as he paid Jake. These alien traders were known for being cheap. They had blue skin and 4 arms, which made them good at operating complex machinery. But they also tried to bargain for everything. Jake had learned to ask for payment up front when dealing with them. "Your repair work is acceptable, human," the captain said in his strange accent, "though your prices are too high." Jake shrugged. "Quality costs money. You want cheap fixes? Go to the scrapyard on level 7. The captain made a grumbling sound but paid the full amount. Jake watched him walk away toward his ship. Another satisfied customer, even if he didn't want to admit it. Nexus Station was not the most beautiful place in the galaxy. The trading post was built from old spaceships welded together. The corridors were narrow and smelled like engine fuel and recycled air. But Jake had grown to like it here. No one cared about his past mistakes. No one asked why he had left Earth's solar system 5 years ago. Jake had been married once. He and Lisa had owned a small repair shop on Luna, one of Earth's moons. They had been happy for a while. But then the big corporations moved in. They offered cheaper repairs using robot workers. Jake and Lisa couldn't compete. They lost their business and their home. The divorce came soon after. Lisa blamed Jake for not adapting to the changing times. After losing everything, Jake had taken his tools and headed for the frontier. Nexus Station needed good mechanics, and Jake was one of the best. Here, skill mattered more than having the latest computer equipment. Here, people still valued a human touch. Jake was packing up his tools when he heard a sound that made his blood turn cold. It was coming from somewhere nearby in the docking bay. The sound was like metal tearing apart, mixed with a high whistle that grew louder every second. Jake had heard that sound only once before. A merchant ship called the New Dawn had made the same noise right before its plasma drive exploded. The blast had destroyed half the space dock and killed 30 people. Jake grabbed his emergency scanner and ran toward the sound. His boots clanged on the metal deck as he moved between parked ships. The noise was getting worse. Whatever was making it was about to become very dangerous. He rounded the corner of a large freight hauler and stopped dead in his tracks. The biggest dragon he had ever seen was standing next to a cargo ship that looked ready to fall apart. The dragon was beautiful despite her tired appearance. Her copper scales caught the light from the bay's overhead lamps. But what really caught Jake's attention were the 3 small dragons pressed against her side. They looked scared and hungry. The cargo ship behind them was a death trap. Jake's scanner was screaming warnings about plasma containment failure. The ship's engines were running on emergency power, and the magnetic bottles that held the superheated plasma were breaking down. Jake estimated they had maybe 2 minutes before the whole thing went up. "Ma'am," Jake called out, trying to keep his voice calm, "you need to get away from that ship right now. Your plasma drive is about to explode." The dragon turned to look at him. Her golden eyes were filled with exhaustion and something that might have been desperation. When she spoke, her voice was deep and musical, even though she sounded worried. "I understand your concern, human, but this vessel is all my family has. I cannot afford repairs." Jake looked at the 3 little dragons again. The smallest one was making tiny squeaking sounds that reminded him of a scared puppy. The middle one kept looking back and forth between Jake and her mother. The biggest one was trying to act brave, but Jake could see fear in his young eyes. "Look, lady," Jake said, "I don't care if you're broke. Those babies are going to be cooked if we don't shut down that drive right now." He pulled out his toolkit and ran toward the ship. The dragon moved to block his path, spreading her massive wings. "I cannot pay you," she said firmly. "Did I ask for money?" Jake replied. He looked up at her huge form. Dragons were supposed to be dangerous, but all he saw was a desperate mother trying to protect her children. "My name is Jake Martinez. I fix ships for a living. And right now your ship is about to kill everyone in this docking bay." The dragon stared at him for a long moment. Then she stepped aside. "My name is Kylara. These are my children, Pyrex, Ember, and Flare." Jake nodded quickly and dove under the ship. The plasma conduits were glowing red-hot. He could feel the heat through his coveralls. Working fast, he found the manual shutdown valve and cranked it closed. The whistling sound stopped immediately. When he crawled back out, the dragon family was watching him with amazement. "Why did you help us?" Kylara asked. "You do not know us." Jake stood up and brushed the dirt off his clothes. "Because everybody deserves a chance," he said simply. "Besides, those little ones remind me of my nephew back home." The smallest dragon, Flare, waddled over to Jake and sniffed his boots. Then he looked up with bright orange eyes and made a happy chirping sound. "He likes you," said Ember, the middle child. Pyrex, the oldest, stepped forward more carefully. "Are you going to fix our ship?" Jake looked at the old cargo hauler. It was in worse shape than he had first thought. The hull had microfractures in a dozen places. The life support system was running on backup power. The navigation computer was held together with tape and hope. "It's going to take some work," Jake said honestly. "This old girl has seen better days." "We have no money," Kylara said again. Jake thought about his own situation. He had enough saved up to live comfortably for a few months. His next paying job wasn't scheduled for another week. He looked at the dragon family again. They had nowhere else to go, and winter was coming to this part of space. The station's heating bills would go up, and food would cost more. But he also remembered what it felt like to lose everything. He remembered standing in his empty shop on Luna, watching the repo men take away his tools. He remembered the look of disappointment in Lisa's eyes when she realized they were truly broke. "Tell you what," Jake said. "I'll fix your ship. You can pay me back when you're able, but I've got one condition." Kylara's eyes narrowed suspiciously. "What condition?" "You let me teach these kids about ship maintenance while I work. They should know how to take care of their home." The 3 young dragons looked excited at this idea. Kylara seemed surprised by his offer. "You would trust us to repay you?" she asked. "I'm a good judge of character," Jake said. "Besides, what kind of person would I be if I let kids go hungry?" Little Flare sneezed, and a small shower of sparks came out of his nose. Jake laughed despite himself. "We're going to get along just fine," he said. Working on a spaceship while 3 young dragons asked questions every 5 minutes was not what Jake had planned for his week. But as he crawled through the narrow access tunnels of Kylara's cargo hauler, he found himself enjoying the company more than he expected. Pyrex turned out to be surprisingly helpful. The young dragon could create small flames with perfect control, which made it easy to see in dark corners of the ship. Even better, he seemed to understand electrical systems naturally. When Jake needed to test a power coupling, Pyrex could sense whether electricity was flowing properly through the wires. "The blue wire feels angry," Pyrex would say, and Jake would find a short circuit exactly where the dragon pointed. Ember had a different talent. She could spot structural problems that even Jake's experienced eyes missed. While Jake was replacing a damaged plasma conduit, Ember pressed her small claws against the ship's hull. "This part feels weak," she announced, "like it wants to break." Jake ran his scanner over the area and found hairline cracks that could have caused a catastrophic failure during their next jump to hyperspace. He made a note to reinforce that section with extra plating. Little Flare mostly provided entertainment. The youngest dragon followed Jake everywhere, asking endless questions about how things worked. When he got excited, which happened often, Flare would sneeze and tiny sparks would shoot out of his nose. This had caused some minor problems when the sparks landed on sensitive equipment, but Jake had learned to cover the important parts before Flare got too enthusiastic. Kaylara herself was the biggest surprise of all. Jake had expected her to be proud and difficult to work with. Dragons had a reputation for thinking they were better than other species. But Kaylara was nothing like that. She was intelligent, curious, and had an amazing understanding of how spaceships worked. "Where did you learn so much about engineering?" Jake asked as they worked together to install a new power converter. "All dragons study the mechanical arts," Kaylara explained. "We must understand the tools we use to travel between stars, but I was always more interested in how things worked than in following traditions." "Is that why you had your kids early?" Jake asked, then immediately felt embarrassed. "Sorry, that's none of my business." Kaylara was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "I did not choose when my children would be born. The eggs hatched when they were ready, but the Dragon Council believes this shows I am rebellious and dangerous." Jake thought about this as he tightened the power converter's mounting bolts. Maybe being rebellious isn't always a bad thing. Over the next few days, Jake learned more about dragon society. Kaylara told him about the sacred seasons and the rigid rules that governed every aspect of dragon life. Dragons were only supposed to mate during certain times. They could only live in approved areas. They had to follow career paths chosen by the council based on their scale color and family history. "It sounds pretty limiting," Jake said. "Many dragons find comfort in tradition," Kaylara replied. "But I always wondered why we couldn't choose our own paths." On the third day of repairs, something strange happened. Jake was running a diagnostic test on the ship's bioscanner when he noticed unusual readings coming from the three young dragons. Their brainwave patterns were unlike anything he had seen before. Normal dragons showed standard neural activity when scanned. But Pyrex, Ember, and Flare displayed synchronized brainwaves that pulsed together like a shared heartbeat. Even more interesting, their synchronization rate was nearly 50% higher than the baseline for adult dragons. "Kaylara," Jake called out, staring at his scanner's display. "You need to see this." The dragon mother looked over his shoulder at the readouts. Her golden eyes widened as she saw the data. "What does this mean?" she asked. Jake ran the scan again to make sure he wasn't making a mistake. The results were the same. "Your kids aren't just different," he said slowly. "They're enhanced. Whatever caused them to develop outside the normal season, it's made their brains work better together." "Better how?" Jake pointed to the synchronized patterns on his screen. "Look at this. Normal dragons process information individually, but your children's minds are linked. They can share thoughts and work together in ways that other dragons can't." As if to prove his point, the three young dragons suddenly looked up from the game they were playing. They moved as one toward a section of the ship's wall and pressed their claws against it. "Mama," Pyrex said, "something is wrong behind here." Jake scanned the area and found a damaged power relay that his instruments had missed earlier. The relay was hidden behind layers of insulation and would have failed during their next long journey. "How did you know?" Jake asked. "We felt it," Ember said simply. "The ship told us," added Flare. Jake stared at them in amazement. "They can sense the ship's condition directly. I've never heard of anything like this." Kaylara's expression changed from confusion to something that might have been hope. "You believe my children are gifted, not cursed?" "Lady, your kids aren't just gifted. They're the next step in dragon evolution. The council doesn't know what they're talking about." That evening, as Jake worked late on the ship's navigation system, Kaylara joined him. The three young dragons were asleep in their makeshift nest, curled together like a pile of colorful blankets. "Jake," she said quietly, "why are you helping us?" "Truly?" Jake set down his tools and thought about the question. 5 years ago, I lost everything I cared about. My business, my home, my marriage. People said I was outdated, that I couldn't adapt to modern times. But you survived." "Yeah, I survived. But I also learned something important. Sometimes the old ways aren't wrong. And sometimes the new ways aren't better. Sometimes you just have to find your own path and ignore what other people think. Kalara nodded slowly. The Dragon Council wanted me to believe my children were mistakes, but you see them differently. I see 3 smart, brave kids who were born at exactly the right time, Jake said. Maybe not according to your council's calendar, but according to something more important. What is more important than tradition? Jake looked at the sleeping dragons and smiled. Love, family, the future. The next morning, Jake finished the last of the major repairs. The old cargo hauler wasn't pretty, but it was safe and reliable. The plasma drive hummed smoothly, the life support systems were working perfectly, and the navigation computer had been upgraded with new software. But more importantly, Jake had discovered something that could change how the galaxy viewed dragons born outside the sacred season. Kalara's children weren't cursed or defective. They were the beginning of something new and wonderful. Where will you go now? Jake asked as Kalara prepared to load her family's belongings back onto the ship. I do not know, she admitted. We are still exiles. No dragon world will welcome us. Jake had been thinking about this problem for days. Maybe you don't need a dragon world. Maybe you need a place where being different is seen as an advantage. Such a place exists? It might, Jake said mysteriously. But first I need to make a few calls. Captain Rex Morrison was having coffee in his favorite diner on Nexus Station when his communication device beeped. The message was from Jake Martinez, the human mechanic who had fixed his ship's engines 6 months ago. Jake was asking for a meeting about something important involving dragons and evolution. Rex was curious. In his 30 years with the Terran Space Navy, he had seen many strange things. But messages about dragon evolution were definitely unusual. He finished his coffee and headed to Docking Bay 94. Rex Morrison was a legend among human space explorers. He had been the first human to make peaceful contact with the Zenthari Confederation. His diplomatic skills had helped humanity join the galactic community instead of being conquered by it. After retiring from active duty, Rex continued to captain exploration missions to the far edges of known space. When Rex arrived at the docking bay, he found Jake welding hull plates on an old cargo hauler. Nearby, 3 young dragons were practicing flying in the zero-gravity section of the bay. Rex watched in amazement as they performed aerial maneuvers that would challenge experienced pilots. Mr. Martinez, Rex called out, I got your message. Something about dragons? Jake set down his welding torch and pulled off his protective helmet. Captain Morrison, thanks for coming. I want you to meet some friends of mine. A large copper-colored dragon landed gracefully near them. Her 3 children settled beside her, looking curious but cautious. Rex had met dragons before, but always in formal diplomatic settings. These dragons seemed more relaxed and friendly. Captain Morrison, the mother dragon said politely, Jake has told us much about your achievements. I am Kalara, and these are my children, Pyrex, Ember, and Flare. Rex nodded respectfully. Pleased to meet you, Kalara. Jake's message mentioned something about evolution. Jake pulled out his scanner and showed Rex the data he had collected over the past week. The brainwave patterns made Rex whistle in appreciation. These synchronization rates are incredible, Rex said, studying the readings. I've never seen anything like this. That's not all, Jake said. He gestured to the young dragons. Show 'em what you can do. The 3 siblings moved to a nearby control panel that operated the bay's cargo loading system. Without touching any buttons, they closed their eyes and concentrated. Suddenly, the massive cargo arm began to move with precise, smooth motions. It picked up a container and placed it exactly where it needed to go. How did they do that? Rex asked in amazement. They can interface directly with electronic systems, Jake explained. Their linked minds can process information faster than any computer. Rex's experienced mind immediately grasped the implications. My God, they could navigate through quantum fields that would destroy normal ships. Exactly what I was thinking, Jake said with a grin. Rex had been planning his next mission for months. The Terran Space Navy wanted to explore the quantum storms around the Andromeda approach. These storms were a natural phenomenon that created pockets of twisted space-time. No ship had ever successfully navigated through them, because conventional computers couldn't process the constantly changing gravitational fields fast enough, but synchronized dragon consciousness might be able to handle what machines could not. Kalara, Rex said carefully. Would you be interested in joining an exploration mission? What kind of mission? She asked. Rex explained about the quantum storms and the scientific importance of exploring the region beyond them. Traditional navigation computers fail in those conditions, but your children's abilities might make it possible. Pyrex stepped forward, his young voice filled with excitement. We could really help? You could make history, Rex said, and prove to the galaxy that dragons born outside the sacred season aren't cursed or defective. Kalara's golden eyes lit up with hope, but then grew worried. Captain, my people have declared us outcasts. No dragon world will welcome us back. Who says you need to go back? Rex replied. The human government has been looking for ways to strengthen our alliance with Dragon Society. Showing that we can work together on important missions would benefit both our species. Jake nodded enthusiastically. Plus, I've been thinking about starting a new business. Bioneural ship interfaces could revolutionize space travel. Bioneural interfaces? Rex asked. Ships that can link directly with dragon consciousness, Jake explained. Imagine vessels that can think and react as fast as the pilots who fly them. Ember perked up at this idea. We could help design them. The three of us working together could make ships that are alive, added Flare. Rex could see the possibilities spreading out like ripples in a pond. This wasn't just about one exploration mission. This was about the future of space travel itself. There's something else, Rex said. Dr. Claire Stevens at the Galactic University has been studying dragon psychology for years. She would be very interested in meeting your family. A scientist who studies dragons? Kailara asked. She believes that Dragon Society's strict traditions might be holding back natural evolution. Rex explained. Your children could be proof that dragons are meant to grow and change, not stay the same forever. Jake had been quiet while Rex and Kailara talked, but now he spoke up. There's one more thing to consider. If this mission works, it will get a lot of attention. The Dragon Council will have to take notice. You think they might change their minds about us? Pyrex asked hopefully. I think they'll have to admit they were wrong, Jake said firmly, and maybe other dragon families who have kids born outside the sacred season won't have to go through what you did. Kailara looked at her three children. They were watching her with trust and love in their eyes. For weeks she had felt like a failure as a mother. She had lost their home, their security, and their place in Dragon Society. But now she saw a chance to give them something better than what they had lost. What would this mission involve exactly? She asked. Rex explained that his ship, the Pathfinder, would need extensive modifications to accommodate dragon passengers and the bioneural interface equipment. The mission itself would take several months. They would travel to the quantum storms, attempt to navigate through them, and explore whatever lay on the other side. It's dangerous, Rex said honestly. No ship has ever made it through those storms. We could be lost forever. But if we succeed, Jake added, we'll prove that dragons and humans can accomplish things together that neither species could do alone. Ember stood up and spread her small wings. I want to do it, Mama. I want to show everyone that we're not cursed. Me too, said Flare, sneezing a small shower of sparks in his excitement. Pyrex nodded seriously. We can help people explore new worlds. That's important. Kailara felt a warmth in her chest that she hadn't experienced since her children hatched. Pride. Not just in their abilities, but in their courage and generosity. Very well, Captain Morrison, she said formally. My family accepts your offer. Rex smiled broadly. Excellent. I'll contact Dr. Stevens and begin preparations for the ship modifications. Jake, I assume you'll be coming with us as chief engineer? Wouldn't miss it for the world, Jake replied. Besides, someone needs to make sure the bioneural interfaces don't explode. As the three adults discussed technical details, the young dragons huddled together excitedly. For the first time since leaving their homeworld, they felt like they had a purpose. They weren't just outcasts anymore. They were pioneers. Little Flare looked up at his mother with bright orange eyes. Mama, are we going to be famous? Kailara nuzzled her youngest child gently. My dear one, we are going to be something much better than famous. We are going to be useful. 3 months later, the Pathfinder approached the edge of the quantum storm field around Andromeda. The modified exploration vessel looked different from any ship ever built. Jake had spent weeks installing bioneural interface pods in the command center. Crystalline conduits ran through the ship's walls, connecting the Dragon Consciousness network to every major system. Kalara floated in the central pod, her massive form secured by specially designed restraints. Around her, Pyrex, Ember, and Flare were positioned in smaller interface chambers. Streams of soft light pulsed through the crystal conduits as their minds linked with the ship's computers. Captain Rex Morrison stood at his command station, watching the readings on his screens with nervous excitement. In 30 years of space exploration, he had never attempted anything this dangerous. The quantum storms ahead of them had destroyed every ship that tried to pass through them. Conventional navigation computers simply couldn't process the constantly changing gravitational fields fast enough to avoid disaster. "Dragon Team, how are you feeling?" Rex asked through the communication system. "We are ready, Captain," Kalara replied, her voice calm and confident. The children can sense the storm patterns clearly. Jake checked his engineering displays one more time. Every system was running perfectly. The bioneural interfaces were operating within normal parameters, but they were about to test technology that had never been tried before in conditions that had killed dozens of crews. "All stations report ready," Rex announced. "Dragon Team, take us in." What happened next was unlike anything the crew had ever witnessed. As the Pathfinder entered the quantum storm field, the three young dragons began to work together in perfect harmony. Their synchronized minds processed navigation data faster than any computer ever built. "Mama," Ember said softly, "we can see the safe path. It looks like a river of light flowing through the darkness." "The gravitational fields are singing to us," added Pyrex. "We know where they want us to go." Little Flare giggled with delight. "The ship feels happy when we guide it the right way." Rex watched his instruments in amazement. The Pathfinder was dancing through spaces that should not have existed. Where other ships would have been torn apart by conflicting forces, they glided smoothly between pockets of twisted spacetime. The young dragons guided them around temporal anomalies that could have aged the crew to death in seconds. Dr. Claire Stevens, the dragon psychology expert who had joined the mission, was recording everything. "This is incredible," she whispered. "They're not just navigating. They're communicating with the quantum fields themselves." The storm region was vast. For 6 hours, the dragon children guided the ship through impossible spaces. They avoided gravitational whirlpools that could have crushed the vessel. They slipped past energy barriers that would have fried every circuit on board. They found paths between dimensions that conventional physics said couldn't exist. Jake monitored the bioneural interfaces carefully. The young dragons showed no signs of strain or fatigue. If anything, they seemed to be enjoying themselves. Their brainwave patterns remained perfectly synchronized throughout the entire journey. "Captain," Pyrex announced suddenly, "we're almost through. There's something beautiful on the other side." "What do you see?" Rex asked. "Stars," said Ember, "but different from the ones we know. They're singing together in harmony." A few minutes later, the Pathfinder emerged from the quantum storm field. The view on the main screen took everyone's breath away. They were looking at a galaxy unlike anything in the known universe. The stars were arranged in perfect spirals that pulsed with coordinated light. Planets orbited their suns in mathematical patterns that seemed almost like music. "My God," Rex whispered, "it's an artificially organized solar system. Someone built this." The discovery was enormous. They had found evidence of an ancient civilization that could manipulate entire star systems. The scientific implications would keep researchers busy for decades. But for Kalara and her children, the real victory was more personal. Rex activated the long-range communication system and sent their report back to human space. Within hours, the news was spreading across the galaxy. The first successful navigation of the Andromeda quantum storms had been accomplished by a human crew working with 3 young dragons born outside the sacred season. The Dragon Council's response came faster than anyone expected. Elder Vorthak's image appeared on the communication screen, his ancient features showing an expression that might have been embarrassment. "Kalara of the Copper Scales," he said formally. "The Dragon Council has reviewed the data from your mission. Your children's achievements suggest that our understanding of the sacred seasons may require examination." Kalara straightened to her full height, her 3 children flanking her with pride. "Elder Vorthak, my children were born exactly when the universe needed them to be born. Not a moment earlier, not a moment later. Perhaps," the old dragon admitted reluctantly, "the universe has seasons of its own that we have not recognized." Dr. Stevens stepped forward. Elder Vorthak, I would like to request permission to study other dragon children born outside the traditional seasons. This family may not be unique. The elder dragon was quiet for a long moment. Permission granted. It appears we have much to learn. In the weeks that followed, everything changed. The Pathfinder became the most famous exploration vessel in known space. Dragon families who had been hiding children born at the wrong times began to come forward. Scientists discovered that these special dragons had abilities that traditional dragon society had never recognized. Jake found himself busier than ever, designing bioneural interfaces for other ships. The technology that had started as an emergency solution to help one refugee family had become the foundation for a new type of space exploration. Captain Morrison was promoted to admiral and given command of a whole fleet of bioneural vessels. Each ship was crewed by both humans and dragons working together as partners. But the most important changes happened within dragon society itself. The Dragon Council quietly began to revise their breeding protocols. Suddenly, out-of-season births were viewed as potential gifts rather than curses. Young dragons who had been outcasts were welcomed back to their communities. Kalara and her children returned to Dracosia Prime as heroes. They were given a place of honor among the Guardian caste, but they chose to spend most of their time working with the human space program, exploring new worlds and making discoveries that benefited all species. Years later, when Jake was old and gray, he would still smile when he remembered the day he met a desperate dragon mother and her 3 hungry children. He had thought he was just fixing a broken ship. Instead, he had helped change the course of galactic history. Pyrex, Ember, and Flare grew up to become the most respected navigators in known space. They pioneered new techniques for quantum exploration and discovered dozens of new worlds. More importantly, they proved that cooperation between species could accomplish miracles that no one could achieve alone. The dragon children born outside the sacred season were no longer seen as cursed outcasts. They were recognized as the next step in dragon evolution. The rigid traditions that had governed dragon society for thousands of years slowly gave way to a more flexible approach that valued individual abilities over strict compliance with ancient rules. As Jake often told the young mechanics who worked for him, evolution doesn't wait for permission. It just finds a way. And in the vast expanse of space, humans and dragons continued to find new ways to explore the universe together, proving that sometimes the best discoveries come from the most unexpected partnerships. The dragon who was expelled for giving birth out of season had shown the galaxy that timing isn't everything. Love, courage, and cooperation could overcome any tradition. The universe was vast and full of wonders, and it took all kinds of minds working together to understand its mysteries.